Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Washington Brief for Tuesday, May 6th, 2025. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Michael Jenkins, president of the Washington Times Foundation, which sponsors this webcast. Dr. Jenkins is also president of the Washington Times Holdings, the LLC that owns the Times news organization, and he has led many successful fact-finding trips to Korea for policy experts and peace initiatives to the Middle East for the Universal Peace Federation. Welcome, Dr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you for the Washington Times Foundation, which you head up and do so much to make this program possible. Welcome to our audience throughout the world. Our topic today is the relevance of peace studies to conflict resolution, preparing the next generation to bring peace and civility to a fragile world. We live in a highly charged and conflicted world, one burdened by frozen conflicts, steaming hot conflicts, and conflicts waiting to flare up. While traditional political and economic approaches to peace are essential, they are not entirely adequate in addressing or resolving some of the root causes of conflict. With this in mind, our discussion will focus on the relevance and role of a wide range of aspects of the human experience, including intercultural and interreligious dialogue, education, diplomacy, and so forth, and the effort to redirect human energies toward peace rather than conflict. We have an outstanding panel today, as usual. Our panelist and commentator is Dr. Alexander Manzaroff. Dr. Manzaroff is an adjunct professor of security studies at the Edmund A. Walsh School of Foreign Service at Georgetown University in Washington. He's also the adjunct professor of Korean studies at SAIS, School of Advanced and International Studies at Johns Hopkins University. Our moderators, Ambassador Joseph Detrani, a well-known commentator on security issues. Formerly, Ambassador Detrani was the special envoy for the six-party talks with North Korea, and he was the director of National Counterproliferation Center and associate director of national intelligence. Ambassador Detrani is also the author of The North Korean Threat, Intelligence and Diplomacy, published by the National Institute for Public Policy. Our guest panelist today is Thomas G. Walsh. Dr. Walsh is the president of the Unification Theological Seminary and professor of religion and peace. He has also served as senior advisor and recent past chairman of the Universal Peace Federation International. He also serves as chairman of the Sunhawk Peace Prize Foundation and chairman of the World Peace Road Foundation, and as co-chair of the Coalition of Faith-Based Organizations. His academic training was in the field of religion and social ethics. He earned his PhD at Vanderbilt University. He has been a teacher, author, and editor with specialization in areas of interfaith relations, religious studies, religion and peace, philosophy, and social theory. Dr. Walsh is vice president of the International Council of the World Associations of Non-Governmental Organizations and on the board of directors of the Washington Times. He is executive editor of Dialogue and Alliance, a scholarly interfaith journal. He has contributed and edited more than 20 books related to interfaith peace building and renewal of the United Nations. So welcome to Ambassador Detrani, our moderator. We're going to have a very, very good program here. I happen to be on the board of the HJI. The HJI is the International Graduate School of Peace and Public Leadership with the Unification Theological Seminary. Dr. Detrani, we look forward to your wonderful leadership for this program. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. And I hope you stay on the program with us so that we could interact with Dr. Walsh.
All right.
Because you're so intimate on all these issues. So thank you, Dr. Jenkins.
Thank
and
you.
Dr. Walsh, thank you for joining us. It's an honor.
Pleasure.
Anyone who heads up a graduate school of peace and leadership studies is really a very special person. And we need more of you. Given what's happening in the world, and we all know what's happening. We look at the war in Gaza, we look at the war in Ukraine, we look at the starvation in Sudan, we look around the world with the increase in autocracies and dictatorships You would think it would be going in the opposite direction, but the trend lines are going in a very negative direction. So today, what an opportunity to talk to Dr. Walsh, who's preparing the next generation of leaders who will work on conflict resolution, conflict mediation, and the importance of those issues. So over to you, Dr. Walsh, and thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. I thank the Washington Times Foundation for giving this opportunity to be part of this very distinguished panel. Worked closely with Dr. Michael Jenkins over many years and have come to know you, Ambassador Detrani, and Dr. Mansrov, and have the highest respect for your academic credentials, your experience in public service, and it's a pleasure to always be together with you. Yeah, I'm now heading up the HJ International Graduate School for Peace and Public Leadership. We're based in Manhattan. We're a few blocks, we're right at the corner of 43rd and 5th Avenue, and not far from First Avenue, where of course, headquarters of the United Nations is located. But as was said in the introduction, we're living in a world that's on a short fuse. And every morning we're not sure what we're going to read about next. And this, Dr. Jenkins, you explained this very well. I want to mention that at HJI, we have started a journal called the International Journal on Peace and Public Leadership, and we'll have an article by Ambassador Detrani in our forthcoming issue. And that article underscores the importance of leadership. He highlights, for example, the efforts that President Nixon made to create some rapprochement and opening up the relationship with China. He talks about Deng Xiaoping, Bill Clinton, and others also who made tremendous efforts to try to break through the ice and the blockages that prevent us from significant progress on the Korean Peninsula. So I applaud that article, and we're excited about this journal, which will underscore the role of leadership and peace professionals. I also note that recently in the Washington Times, sorry to talk about you, Joe, but you're always putting out great content on Pope Francis. I had an opportunity to meet Pope Francis on a couple of occasions. First, in 2013, I was serving as chair of the Universal Peace Federation when I was invited as part of a small delegation for the then very young Pope Francis, and the crisis in Syria had opened up during that period, and he brought in a group of consultants, included Jeffrey Sachs and William Venley, who was head of the Religions for Peace NGO at the UN. And we deliberated for 3 days. We're in close proximity to Pope Francis, had meals in the cafeteria with him at Domus Sancta Marta. Was a wonderful experience of that great man. And then again in 2019, had the opportunity to be with him. And one of the exciting things he wanted to present at that time was a document called On Human Fraternity and World Peace, which he subsequently had a ceremony in Abu Dhabi with the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar in Egypt. And this was an anniversary of Saint Francis, who had met with the Sultan in 1219 in the 13th century as a kind of, and this was during the Fifth Crusade. So I like that you wrote about Pope Francis. Makes us reflect on St. Francis, his efforts for peace, even during the Crusades, and what leadership can accomplish. We, as a graduate school, are raising students, about 150 students from all across the world, about 40 nations. I'm currently teaching a class on the relationship between ecumenism and interreligious dialogue and peace. And I have students from India, from Sri Lanka, from the Philippines, from South Africa, from the UK, and we meet virtually every week, but an excellent class who have had direct hands-on experience with crisis situations. Our students have gone on to internships at the Office of Peacekeeping Operations at the UN, at the International Red Cross, at agencies associated with NATO in the Baltics, with the parliaments of India and Nepal. We have a graduate that Dr. Jenkins knows, and probably you know, Dr. Mansurov and Ambassador Detrani, Eknath Dekal, who's based in Nepal. He's been a government minister, as a member of parliament, and he has gone because Nepal has diplomatic relations with North Korea. They have sent delegations there, and in an effort to kind of break the thaw, not necessarily with the six parties that you're so experienced with, Ambassador Detrani, but working perhaps from the margins toward the center. And a little bit that's the fate of the non-governmental world. NGOs are not member states of the United Nations, but nevertheless have their own base of people-to-people power, sometimes called track 2 diplomacy, that can be very, very effective in addressing conflicts around the world. We've done our best, our alumni in particular, in efforts in the Middle East to try to bring the Abrahamic faith leaders together to see if there's that through dialogue we can build trust, confidence, and move incrementally toward creating a kind of environment for peace to emerge. Trying to build up social capital in fragile states is very important. So these aspects, we often hear of the term, getting at the causes of conflict and violence, the root causes. Sometimes from certain perspectives, that is code language for, well, it's economic disparity and social injustices. Of course, that's a relevant factor, but I think one of the goals of our education is to kind of create a wider sense of literacy, of causal factors, of relevant factors in a more holistic way of understanding what Johann Galtung would call positive peace, and that it involves much, much more than simply the power dynamics, balance of power on a geopolitical level, but takes into account these factors of how issues like ethnicity, culture, religion, governance, social capital play into the root causes, into that complex. Because I don't think we should be reductionistic about these happening. I was happy in your article, Joe, where you talked about the foundation that works in North Korea. The name slips me right now, but they were doing the humanitarian work, and that's an area that we also have made our best efforts to contribute to over the years. I'll conclude, because I know I will have time for more discussion, just to say I recently was in Korea for an international meeting together with the Universal Peace Federation and other associations, as we frequently do annually, because we do view the Korean Peninsula as this extremely critical flashpoint that kind of epitomizes the polarization that has kind of become a kind of pandemic globally. And we brought together speakers of parliaments from about 40 different nations and created a new coalition called the Interparliamentary Speakers Council. We had members there from the Podgorica Club, former President Vujanovic from the Balkans, who brings together former heads of state from the Balkans regions, leaders from CENSAD, who are working to try to bring peace and stability and development in the Sahel region of Africa. President Goodluck Jonathan there. I had a good chance to talk with Francisco Rojas, who's the rector of the University for Peace based in Costa Rica, and a chance to kind of compare curricula, compare challenges that we face. And we talked about finding a time to meet up sometime later this year. So there's a lot going on. Education is facing many, many challenges, as both of you know, all three of you know, because of your role with higher education, but it's also facing challenges. The recent book by Henry Kissinger also about artificial intelligence and the threats and opportunities that are there. I think it's the last book he wrote before he passed on, but very significant. And AI is affecting higher education. It's affecting, as technology often does, it affects many, many areas of human society. So we're really in an exciting time, a challenging time, and we just hope things don't unravel in the wrong direction. And that's why we need to keep plugging the holes in the dike and keeping some degree of stability and peace, and hopefully moving toward breakthroughs for a better world, looking down the road. So I'll stop there, Joe. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you, Dr. Walsh. You know, I have one very brief question before I look to Alexander. I note an element of optimism in your presentation, an element that interreligious dialogue, an element where people are coming together to confront some of these issues. Are you guardedly optimistic that we could address some of these compelling issues that we're confronting?
I remain optimistic, hopeful, and I see really no alternative to not give in to despair or a kind of nihilism. That's another prevailing sphere of thought in our world today. So I am very hopeful. I'm excited about the work that I'm able to continue to do with the Universal Peace Federation, even though I'm not in a principal role any longer. But I really feel that there's opportunity there. I believe that if the faith leaders do come together, and I know you said this again in thinking about the next pope, and you mentioned not only the pope, but the representatives, counterparts in the other religions working together. So I think religion is one of those areas. I think higher education can be. We are in debates in the United States about whether higher education has kind of started to lean in a way that it's lost some of the authentic academic freedom that would have a greater diversity. And there's a little bit too much groupthink in certain departments that have kind of locked in and become more exclusive. How to counter that? So I think there are items, aspects of the contemporary situation that are hopeful, but it's very, very sensitive about how it can go in this issue over democracy and populism or de-democratization. We've got serious population problems now, population. Korea's at 0.7% fertility rate. Japan's not far behind. These are serious things for many of the industrialized nations, but Russia also. So how do we give more focus to human security, but this issue of the polarization, and that's why this simple concept of dialogue, which has emerged in the 20th century, 21st, as critical as understanding how we can better talk to one another, build trust. I think it was Francisco Rojas, he came up with a word that kind of combines cooperation and competition, that we can still compete, but we have to talk. We have to find the way to build incrementally toward greater and greater cooperation, and hopefully the kind of fraternity or solidarity that even Pope Francis advocated in this document on human fraternity and world peace, which was taken up by the UN. They created the Day of Human Fraternity, and so he made a great impact. And so I am
Thank you, Dr. Walsh.
guarded, as you said, guarded, but optimistic.
No, what an outstanding presentation. There's so much to discuss here, and I'll look to Alexander to start the dialogue. Alexander.
Yes, thank you, Ambassador, and greetings to everyone. Dr. Walsh, what an amazing presentation. I really learned quite a bit from your coverage of all the issues which we're discussing today. Let me begin by reminding everyone that we're going to celebrate the 80th anniversary of the Victory Day in a few days, and we owe a profound debt of gratitude to the great generation, my grandfather, my grandmother, and the grandparents and parents of most of us, for securing that victory over Nazism and fascism, which really laid the foundation for the lasting peace, the peace which endured for more than 70 years. And so when I talk to the Zoomers, when I talk to the millenniums, I always remind them of the debt of gratitude which we owe to those who came before us. Memory is important because if we don't learn lessons of history, then we're bound to repeat them, especially in our world. So that said, let me talk a little bit about the subject of today. Of course, after the Cold War ended in 1991, there was a lot of talk about the so-called end of history and the triumph of liberal democratic peace theory. We'll all live together in peace, kumbaya, sitting kumbaya. And of course, as far as the religion was concerned, as you know, Dr. Walsh, very well, it was expected to gradually cede away from the narrative of global affairs. We had this so-called secularization theory, which stipulated that under modern conditions, religion will either be gradually abandoned, or radically polarized and marginalized. And yet that didn't turn out that way. I mean, 85% of the people in this world, of the global population, they are motivated by religious and spiritual beliefs. I mean, the gods refuse to die. They're still with us. And so the liberal democratic peace theory, peace actually never arrived. If anything, the liberal values-based world order violently is disintegrating before our eyes into this global disorder as a result of this balkanization. You talked about polarization and demonization, which is often actually helped by various forms of politicized religion. I mean, we saw it in 9/11. I mean, we saw it in the Balkans. We saw it with ISIS in Syria. I mean, Ukraine today, the holy war, which is going on in the eyes of some people. And yet most policymakers and scholars, as you alluded to, they exhibit this secularist bias. But probably because of the separation of state and church, because of the training they got in school, how to approach international affairs. And that leads to blind spots, in my opinion, that kind of often ends up in pretty naive analysis of religion and world affairs. And I'd say there was one exception, though. And that one exception early on, 30 years ago, was Doug Johnston's book on the missing dimension of statecraft, about the role of religion in international affairs. And as you know, Dr. Walsh, it became a foundational resource in university courses on international relations, even in specialized training at the US State Department's Foreign Service Institute. I mean, they use that seminal work to train diplomats in how to kind of use religion in the practice of diplomacy. It also helped create the International Center for Religion and Diplomacy back in 1988, and it led to a number of important institutional innovations and, I would say, initiatives supporting that very valuable work at the nexus of religion and global affairs, like the Religion and International Affairs Initiative launched by the Henry Luce Foundation. They put a lot of money in it in 2005. Also, the Social Sciences Research Council launched the Religion and International Affairs Project, as you know. And the Council on Foreign Relations initiated the Religion and Foreign Policy Initiative 20 years ago. I mean, at my Georgetown University, we have the Berkeley Center for Religion, Peace, and World Affairs, which is doing very important work along the same lines you are doing. My alma mater, Columbia University, established a Center for the Study of Democracy, Toleration, and Religion back in 2006. And of course, the NGOs, they got together, and in addition to what you mentioned, they set up the Transatlantic Policy Network on Religion and Diplomacy 10 years ago. And as I understand, I mean, the agenda was never about any kind of special pleading, for religion or any kind of apologetics. I mean, nobody's trying to apologize. Nobody's trying to promote religion through these fora, using those platforms. Not really, they're not even trying to instrumentalize religion, to solve conflicts. My understanding is that these efforts are about introducing a little bit more balanced understanding of the role of faith in resolving human conflict. If anything, it's about bridging those cultural and religious divides between different faiths and civilizations. It's about strategic engagement, if you wish, of religion and faith to advance the course of peace, world peace, using the religious actors, and you mentioned quite a few of them. So what you're trying to do, as I understand, is to provide greater context, of all these conflicts, highlighting that religious dimension of many of them, highlighting the complexity of these conflicts, trying to kind of stress the need for synergies. I mean, we can use economic tools of power, political tools, diplomacy, whatever, but, to kind of get to the point of synergy you need also to rely on the religious dimension. So my question is very simple. What else? What else can faith and religion, the interreligious dialogue, do to root out the fundamental causes of human conflict? Now, what's missing now? What I try to say is that a lot is being done on the religious side as well, but something is missing. And what is missing? And why? And why does it matter that we really find what's missing and address that?
Thank you,
Yeah,
Alexander.
you covered a lot of territory there very, very well. Doug Johnson's a good friend, and in fact, HGI offered him an honorary doctorate about 15 years ago, and largely because of his work, and he has been involved in many of our conferences and deliberations, and indeed, that was a very significant breakthrough, I think, of Madeleine Albright, too, who underscored the role of religion. And you mentioned the Council on Foreign Relations. I thank Richard Haas, who was then its president, who initiated that religion and foreign policy. I've been attending the last 10 years or so, and it's very, very enriching. And I think of Samuel Huntington, and I think that was in 1993 in Foreign Affairs, out of CFR publication on the clash of civilizations. Some didn't like it, thought that he was profiling a kind of a deterministic trajectory of history toward inevitable clashings, but indeed he, I believe, was prophetic in many ways. I think in the post-Soviet era, the kind of way in which Yugoslavia kind of fractured or broke up, and it was very much along religious, ethnic, cultural lines. And this mix of religion, ethnicity, culture, even family structure, style of family structure that we look at, anthropologically, and there these different types of cultures that are more endogamous and exogamous, those that tend to marry externally to the tribe and those that remain more locked. This impacts, so these root causes need to be kind of addressed. Literacy and religious literacy, as well as geopolitical literacy, is very important. And you can approach religion two ways. One is a secularist. You can say, I could care less about faith, and I want nothing much to do with it. Or if I do, it's very, very personal. I don't like to bring it up. But from a sociological or a political science point of view, certainly anthropological, you look at this. Oh, it's a factor. Is there something about the Houthis that links them to Iran that has something to do other with just secular, political, strategic, tactical thinking? Or between Israel and Palestine. So it's just, how does that piece in there, how does it get addressed? And I think that is what one piece that we are trying to underscore at HGI, and many, many people are. And again, it's not to be evangelical. It is to be empirical about what is happening in the world, and looking at even social psychology. What are the values that people have? What are the incentives that people have? And this becomes part of both the analysis of root causes of conflict, along with, let's say, poverty or differences in wealth, and becomes critical to the preventive peace building. How can we work to prevent conflict, and how can we engage in kind of post-conflict peace building to rebuild trust, address trauma, mediate not only resolution, but kind of ultimately, how do we transform this situation in the post-conflict traumatized world of Sudan and South Sudan, for example. I visited South Sudan with another alumni, Dr. Taj Hamad, who's now heading up Universal Peace Federation, and we met with Salva Kiir and talked about the situation. There were principals of North Sudan, Khartoum capital there, and had a very, very productive, but it's a massive, when then you get the powers coming in, also worked closely with the Sahel nations in Mali and Niger, and working with Sensad, and just as we are getting rolling, you've got the aftermath of Libya and Gaddafi's demise and more extremists moving into the Sahel, and a very troubling situation starting to kind of overwhelm the kind of NGO world. So it's something we have to keep at and understand these different factors. I think religious literacy is important, just like you'd say an educated person knows something about art history and the great literature of the world and about geography and these other factors. This is extremely important to getting a comprehensive view of the world situation. I think Huntington was important. The UN took note. They some of them didn't like Huntington. They created the Alliance of Civilizations. Now maybe that name was in some ways to show we're not going to have clashes. We're going to create allies among the nations. And civilization was in a way a code language to be inclusive of religion, but it could be a little bit broader and could refer to, let's say, if China is officially a non-religious state in a very, very strong way, or North Korea, how do you identify what's going on there if they say, no, religion is just a relic of, to some extent, of history, and we've moved on to that to be scientific, but still those are there. There's one demographer who I read a lot, enjoy, Emmanuel Todd. He talks about in parts of France where it's highly secularized. He said there are zombie Catholics. He calls them zombie in the sense that they're still holding deeply Catholic values, even though they say, no, I'm not involved in church or anything like that. And maybe that's true of a lot of the nuns who, when asked, what's your religion, say, none, in the list of options. So a lot going on also in the world of religion, a lot of change, COVID, social media, new generations coming up. It's kind of wide open where things are headed. Some talk about de-churching. We're in some of the post-secular world, we're in the post-Christian era, the post-modern era, a lot of posts out there.
Right.
That we're also addressing.
Before I comment, Dr. Walsh, and ask one or two questions, I'm going to ask Dr. Jenkins if he'd like to contribute something to this very important dialogue. Dr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you, Dr. Manzaroff. And Dr. Walsh, I have enjoyed working with you at the Universal Peace Federation for years. I was president and Dr. Walsh was the chairman. I'm still with the Universal Peace Federation for North America. But we've had some tremendous experiences with HJI. I am really interested in preparing students to become like Ambassador Detrani or Dr. Manzaroff. It was a fascinating thing when we did the Washington Times Fact Finders. And we would meet the foreign minister. We would meet people from the Blue House. We'd meet people that were chairs of Foreign Affairs Committee or NIS. We would go there. But, the fact that when we walked in, people were put at ease almost immediately because they knew Dr. Manzaroff and his books. The NIS director, Dr. Manzaroff, I just read your book and I really enjoyed it right away. And then Ambassador Detrani, so good to see you. I just read your article the other day, and very, very important aspect of the dialogue is to have the knowledge and the familiarity with history. And that's where I think HGI comes in. We had an experience. I'm all for it, and I believe we need to let more people know about it. I want to thank you, Ambassador, for suggesting that Dr. Walsh join us today, because I think we need to let all of the different universities out there know that there's also a complementary effort going on here. Especially, we would like more students from the different regions of the world, because most things can be done online now. It's a tremendous opportunity. And one person who was our congressional liaison to the U.S. Congress, Miss Kayleigh Moffett, she took the graduate course and came back really prepared. We had a meeting with Congressman Mike Kelly, who's the congressman that covers Butler, Pennsylvania, where the assassination attempt was. Well, we met him long before that. But the topic we were discussing, the fact finders that we have done with the Washington Times and with UPF. And he really asked, and we had a group of young interns, because we've been training young people to how to work with Congress and how to engage with Congress. It's so wonderful for them to have that experience. So we had 6 young people in the room with us in the office of the congressman. And then what do you all think? And Kayleigh was ready. She had just finished a very excellent course on, the problems of peace between warring factions or between enemy countries. And I think that that's a great contribution of HGI, and I hope we can promote more of that. So, Dr. Walsh, I have a quick question for you. What is the kind of intentional outreach to students from warring nations and difficult nations? Do we have Ukrainians? Do we have Russians there? Do we have, people from the Asia? I know that Eknath Tikal went through the graduate school and got his degree there. Tremendous. Yeah.
He's a
So what's your outreach?
recent graduate. Thank you, Dr. Jenkins, for that background. And I want to just emphasize the work of Kayleigh Moffett. She recently graduated. She's doing tremendous work also with the Women's Federation for World Peace, and just a remarkable young woman. And we're proud that she went through our peace studies program, as did the Honorable Eknath Tikal, who you referenced, and he lived through the Maoist insurgency in Nepal. There was a lot of bloodshed, and worked to promote and reconcile. And UPF was very, very important in that area. Our partnership with both the Family Federation and with UPF has been very, very important for us, particularly in our outreach, because we have the benefit of having colleagues and friends and allies all over the world, and including Russia and Ukraine. It's very sensitive with those affiliated in Russia, because there's a careful watch, and Ukraine as well at this time. But we held a series of kind of Europe-Eurasian conferences to try to build. This was prior to, of course, the most recent invasion from Russia, but to try to build bridges there. And so we have a student in my class from South Africa, from Liberia, from Benin, who's in the Peace Studies program right now. One of our graduates coming up just in a couple of weeks is based in Kyrgyzstan and has recently been appointed to a position in the government there. So we are reaching out globally through our network, through our alumni who are in Africa, the South and Central America, Asia Pacific, and of course here in North America. And the word is getting out. I think the journal is going to help, International Journal for Peace, and public leadership. We have our own series of webinars and faculty roundtables that attract a wide audience as well. So we want to build up our program increasingly. We currently offer the MA in peace studies, also a degree in interreligious peace building, but we want to expand. We'd like to eventually have a doctoral program, and I'm really hoping that we can arrange in the not too distant future for Ambassador Detrani or Dr. Mansrov to be visiting scholars. Dr. Jenkins, I'll have to appeal to the board for that. I don't know if the board will be open to that or not. I think they will.
They would be delighted to honor and welcome both of them.
We've also worked with Bishop Munib Yunan, who's a former head of the Lutheran World Federation. He was with us recently in Korea, had good discussions with him, and we have been working with the University of Bethlehem, its Alika Center, on a variety of efforts to bring together principles in Israel and Palestine for dialogue, and the wider Middle East is very important. I had a chance while in Korea with Dr. Jenkins to also talk, as I mentioned, to the rector, Francisco Rojas of the University for Peace, but also with Dr. Sakina Yakubi, who established the Afghan Institute for Learning, Educating Women and Girls, a very powerful woman and voice for peace in that part of the world. And I want to mention Dr. Patrick Awua from Ghana, who started the Asahi University several years ago, and it's had remarkable growth in educating very intentionally young Africans in IT and character education. And we discussed the way in which perhaps HJI and Asahi University can collaborate. So this is another exciting aspect of how we can find other institutions that share these values and goals, learn from one another and collaborate
Right.
together.
That's excellent, Dr. Walsh. Thank you, Dr. Jenkins, for the question. And Dr. Walsh, I'm so impressed, and I know the audience is equally impressed. There's so much going on, but let me sort of look at the other side of the ledger. Let me sort of posit a few things and get your response, Dr. Walsh. You know, you mentioned polarization, because the world has become more polarized now. We have more alliances. For the United States, it's NATO. It's the AUKUS. It's working with the Republic of Korea, Japan, and the United States. So there is this element, and then when you look at the axis of authoritarian states, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the BRICS, the Global South, you almost get a sense that we're splintering. We're splintering into different groups, an element of tribalism, if you will. And that's scary in a lot of ways, because that is not democratization, because usually democracies, at least my reading of history is, democracies do not fight each other. They eschew conflict, but we see a proliferation of autocracies. And I mentioned the axis of authoritarian states and so forth. So despite all this good work that the United Nations, that the various schools, and certainly HJI and all the others are doing, you mentioned Pope Francis. I can't applaud enough. I mean, he visited 64 countries, had interreligious dialogue in each of those countries with the Shia, with the Sunnis. I mean, what more can we be doing? But for some reason, the leadership of these various countries. The leadership is not moving in that same direction. So
Mm.
my first question to you is, does the public have to put more pressure on our leaders so that we move towards peace? We move towards reconciliation. We move towards conflict resolution, because the trend lines are going in the opposite direction. And you mentioned Pope Francis, and I know, when I look at some of the basic tenets, I look at the Ten Commandments. It's very simple. They're right there, just a few words and so forth. Adhere to that. That's powerful. And we'd have a world that could better cooperate, could better come together to address the pandemics, food scarcity, etc. So my question to you is, what more should the public be doing? What should we be reaching more of the public, if you will, to get a narrative so that the public can, if you will, put that much more pressure on their leaders so that we look at reconciliation, so that we move in a different direction. And I'll end on this note with the proliferation of autocracies, and you yourself mentioned popularism in your opening statement. It doesn't seem to be going in the right direction. What do I have wrong, Dr. Wall?
I think you've got a pretty good perspective on what we're dealing with at this time in our world. It's an age of distrust. If we think of the era that we might call globalization, that somehow was a post-World War II phenomenon of the United Nations, it's now as another 80th anniversary with the UN, and people see multilateralism as at a low point, a weak point, kind of almost not quite, but kind of League of Nations level of sense of, is this institution able to really work effectively, or is it really power politics that will continue to dominate? And we could also say, were there failings of the globalist project that may have its roots in the Enlightenment, universality, the power of rationality, human rationality, to build and establish kind of a global meta-narrative that we could all embrace, like liberal democracy, or alternatively, international communism. Some kind of grand meta-narrative was an aspiration. And we've seen somehow that unravel before our eyes. To some extent, that started with Gorbachev and Perestroika and the end of the Soviet era. And there was also associated with it that, and I think there's something that we have to look at ourselves in the West. To what extent did we contribute? Was there an arrogance there? Was there a lack of literacy, of deeper levels of what makes people tick and understand their religious background, what's going on? Maybe we missed that, and that these deep roots in ethnicity, in narrative that's often related to fundamental myth and understanding of reality. And to some extent, the Western dynamic has become more decadent and confusing to people, and wondering if we're running off a cliff of decadence and selfishness, and can't find the goodness or a consensus on the good life that could inspire and uplift. So I think we're in this traditional pendulum swing away from this aspiration for universalism toward a strong post-liberal emphasis on particularism, back to national identity. And we somehow dismiss national identity. Oh, that's religion is kind of an outdated, but people are deeply connected to their roots and their families and their traditions in that. And somehow we missed that. And you could say if the West was kind of leading this globalization in certain ways, especially through the economic power, it was missing certain aspects that these, what John Rawls called these comprehensive doctrines, would be kind of coordinated by this liberal state. And there was something good about that, and it would create justice. But we're seeing a rise up. So I think we can't give up, as you've indicated as well. I think dialogue is critical, mutual respect, understanding there's got to be some kind of balance between this universalist aspirations with recognition of the particular values of individual countries, and avoiding this demonization that takes place, demonization of the West or demonization of other countries. And we have to work toward dialogue. We can't be naive or Pollyanna-ish. We have to understand hard realities. The instruments of hard power are going to be there, but the fields of education, of family and family structure, and of interreligious dialogue. Again, this is not essentially about evangelism when you think about religion or proselytization, but understanding that this is deeply rooted and very much embedded in or enmeshed with ethnicity. They're deeply tied, and sense of nationality, and easy to feel humiliated or disrespected. And this creates the kind of rage that is so often felt. How do we start to reconcile that? It's a tough task. There's no easy fixes. Somehow, we all recognize in history there are overwhelming forces at play that defy our best intentions and efforts. And sometimes those moments are very destructive. Sometimes they can be great breakthroughs. People talk about the axial age back in the first century BC, first millennium BC, where there was this explosion, kind of a Cambrian explosion of Buddhism and Confucianism and Hellenistic thought, Plato and Aristotle, rabbinic Judaism, development of the canon of the Hebrew Bible and the Torah, and those things that floated and got carried forward in Christianity, and was very, very central. So in some ways, and I think AI is going to play into this. This is a massively significant aspect, just as the printing press at the time of the Protestant Reformation was extremely important, or the emergence of the internet. This seems to be, by many, to be another major turning point.
Thank you, Dr.
This
Walsh.
technology, but
Thank you.
human-
I mean, your comments are just outstanding, and we could just go on and listen to your views, which are very profound. We only have time for one quick question from both Dr. Monsaroff and Dr. Jenkins, but could you make it very brief, please? We'll go first to Dr. Jenkins, and then to Dr. Monsaroff. Dr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Ambassador. Dr. Walsh, the President Trump has initiated the White House Faith Office and put it in the West Wing. And you mentioned that there was a need for more involvement of the heads of state and the governments in this religious direction. Any thoughts on that? The representative of the White House Faith Office was at our UPF World Summit recently and did a wonderful job. And what was interesting too is that office is for all faiths. So they welcome Muslims, they welcome Jewish leaders and Buddhists and so forth, and Christians. So any thoughts on that step that has been done?
Yeah, just a quick response. Really, yeah, Paula White, I've met her several times, and wonderful, devout Christian woman. I'll never forget the time I heard her speak, and she talked about relational Christianity, that we are relational beings. It's kind of a theological anthropology, that we're not fundamentally doctrinal beings, but kind of relational, and that we need to emphasize quality of relationships. And I've seen her in interfaith contexts where she is completely comfortable talking to Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, Sikhs, Jains, indigenous African spiritual leaders, etc. So I think this is so important. I'm glad that President Trump initiated this Office of Faith, and I think it's extremely important because, going back, Joe, to your point about polarization, the religions are polarized too. They're not these monoliths of purity and sweetness either. You know, deeply, deeply problematic in a lot of aspects, and deeply discordant in a lot of ways that also have to be reconciled. So, as I'll conclude on this, the need for interreligious dialogue, but also within Islam, the Sunni and the Shia,
Yes, of course.
Sufi, and within Christianity, the Orthodox, Catholic, Protestant, within Buddhism, and finding ways. And it's not only about doctrine. In some ways, it's moved. The religions are talking about the political and the cultural issues, and at odds over that. So the dialogue is not simply about the Trinity or those kinds of things,
No,
but
no, excellent comments, Dr. Walsh. Dr. Monsadov.
To Walsh, you're brilliant. So let me ask you one simple question. You know, the big idea behind our guns is that, and realists believe this, if you want peace, you must prepare for war. And therefore, higher military expenditures, constant trainings, higher troop levels, etc. But my question is, why can't we all agree that if we want peace, that we must build peace, not prepare for war? And that's what President Trump is doing in Ukraine. I mean, he's working hard to bring about that ceasefire, and he's meeting with all these strong headwinds. People, vested interests are opposed to it. So even though he's trying to do it, one step at a time, building it brick by brick, and yet, people want him to prepare for war as opposed to find that peaceful solution. So my question to you is very simple, not from top down, but from bottom up. What is it that peace starts with me movement? I mean, is it really realistic? Is it credible? What's your experience with that peace starts with me, with every single one of us movement?
yeah, I mean, that's a critical point that you raise, and I think it's extremely important, extremely true that you can have grand ideas for strategy for peace, but also if we are ourselves corrupted, it has to do with what's sometimes called virtue ethics, that we need to become people of goodness ourselves, and develop, and through virtues we control our passions, our appetites, those aspects that would distort our perspective, our ability to see clearly. That's why virtues important. And so this peace starts with me. On that foundation, stabilization of the family. These demographics are critically important as well to destabilization of nations. People fear for the future of Korea, for example, with this demographic cliff. So the peace starts with me is a very important concept that many have voiced, and it's extremely and more important today than it in any time in history. And I think that again is the holistic dimension. I am very fond of the thought of Reinhold Niebuhr, the 20th century, who advocated what was called Christian realism. He was a realist about the political realities and thought that overly utopian aspirations, and he couldn't agree with pacifism. So I do believe peace through strength is important, in the hopes that because you're strong, you never have to use those horrible weapons. But the competition, and again, I hate to keep mentioning this, but the whole cyber area and the AI aspect of warfare is only going to further accentuate the challenges that we face, and finding the ways to have peace. Peace starts with AI too. You know, how we embed or code AI in a way that it's aligned with human values. But if our values are polarized, AI and machine learning is going to get polarized too. So
No, that's
got a lot
an
of work.
excellent point, Dr. Walsh. Dr. Walsh, I'll have the moderator's prerogative and ask the last question, if I may. What a great session this has been. If you were to be asked, what would be the top 3 initiatives for any head of state, especially a leadership state like the United States? What would be the top 3 initiatives that could be pursued so that we can get a world that is more tranquil, a world that speaks about the common good, and ensures that there's no food scarcity, and addresses some of the issues, the pandemics and other issues that are affecting so many innocent people. What would be the 3 initiatives a new leader should, in your view, take?
I mean, I would say, number one, addressing this issue of polarization and bringing voices together, representatives together, and working towards some kind of solution. There are people working on this, trying to map out a path to greater civility and understanding, where we tend to just find others incomprehensible. You know, I can't even begin to comprehend the left or the right, and it kind of undermines trust and even the potential for dialogue. So some kind of initiative toward bringing an end to that polarization. I would love to see President Trump engage in that kind of effort. I think addressing some of these issues of marriage and family are very important, even though, once again, they're the kind of taken for granted aspects of life. But I think not only are educational institutions important, but the family is extremely important as the kind of real primary school of education and childhood development. And this is important globally in an era of depopulation, or in places even where there's higher fertility rates, where the resources for education and healthcare, et cetera, are dismal. So this also has to be underscored. So it's some of these underserved areas, like addressing polarization, addressing issues of the family. And as we've said, I'm always going to advocate increasing effort in engaging religious leaders in this process, not just because they have all the wisdom, but also that they can be better apprised of what's going on globally as well. And I think that model of what UPF is doing, what the Council on Foreign Relations is doing with its workshop on religion and foreign policy is a good model that we could follow. So I think it's developing, Joe, some of these soft power instruments of peace, not to abandon the hard power instruments. They're going to need to be there until we really do rebuild some trust.
Thank you, Dr. Walsh. I know we've gone beyond 1 hour, but what a fascinating discussion this has been. So I want to thank you, and thank you and the school for what you're doing in training the next generation of leaders who will be pursuing peace in the field of public leadership. So thank you, Dr. Walsh. Over to you, Michael Jenkins.
Thank you, Ambassador Detrani, for your fine moderation, and Dr. Walsh's fascinating discussion. Dr. Manzaroff, always so insightful. We have seen in the Middle East that the most important option to even take steps forward right now will involve interfaith dialogue. We want to thank the Washington Times for also supporting this program. And we look forward to their coverage of today's program. And we want to thank our audience. Also, this program was a little unique. Usually we're focused with intelligence experts and various views from the ambassadors and others on Northeast Asia, and sometimes on the struggles in other sectors of the world. But again, it was very good to take a look at the academic side, which is very, very, very important, as we can see today. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you
Dr.
for a
Jenkins.
wonderful time.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Walsh.
Yeah, thank you.
Alexander?
This